He told his generals it would be over in 10 days. 10 days. That was the calculation. Ukraine would buckle, the West would hesitate, and Vladimir Putin would rewrite the map of Europe before the world had time to respond. That was 1,534 days ago. Today, a classified dossier leaked from a European intelligence agency is painting a picture so different from Putin's narrative that it raises a question every analyst of global power must now seriously ask. Is the man who launched the largest land war in Europe since World War II now afraid of his own shadow? The answer, backed by hard data, verified intelligence, and battlefield numbers the Kremlin has fought to suppress, is yes. And here at Global Faultlines, that is exactly what we are here to unpack. Stay with me, because the data you are about to see does not just tell you what is happening on the ground in Ukraine. It tells you something far larger, about the nature of power, the mathematics of attrition, and why the geopolitical map of the next decade is being written right now in ways most headlines are completely missing. Welcome to Global Faultlines, where we go beyond the breaking news cycle to give you the strategic picture. The forces shaping nations, the alliances forming in silence, the data points that reveal what is really shifting beneath the surface of global events. Today we are deep inside the Russia-Ukraine war, not at the level of daily frontline updates, but at the level of strategic trajectory. Where is this conflict actually going? What do the numbers really say? And what does the behavior of Vladimir Putin right now tell us about the direction of Russian power? Let us start where the story is most urgent and most revealing. In early May 2026, CNN and the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, the OCCRP, published the contents of a detailed intelligence dossier obtained from a source connected to a European intelligence agency. What it described was not the Putin the Kremlin projects to the world. According to the report, since March 2026, the Kremlin has been operating under what the document describes as high alert, gripped by fears of a coup or assassination attempt targeting Putin himself. Not from a Ukrainian missile, not from a special forces raid across the border. The report states clearly that Putin fears an attempt on his life from within Russia's own political elite, and specifically fears the use of drones by insiders to carry it out. Think about what that means strategically. After 26 years in power, the man who built the modern Russian security state is now turning that apparatus inward, not to defend Russia from external threats, but to protect himself from the people around him. The security measures now in place tell the full story. Every visitor to the Kremlin passes through 2 separate rounds of screening before they can get near Putin. His personal bodyguards have taken full control of his public schedule. He has not visited a single military facility in 2026, despite making regular appearances at military bases throughout 2025. That access has been completely cut off. The people who cook his food, drive his cars, and clean his offices have had surveillance systems installed in their private homes. They are banned from using public transport. No one in his immediate working circle is permitted to carry a phone connected to the internet. Putin's family has quietly left their known residences. The Moscow region home, abandoned. The secluded Valdai retreat, empty. According to the dossier, Putin now spends extended periods in reinforced bunker complexes near Krasnodar, a coastal region in southern Russia, hours from Moscow. And to maintain the image of a functioning, present leader, the Kremlin is releasing pre-recorded footage of Putin. Staged. Filmed in advance. Released to manufacture normalcy for a man whose movements are now almost entirely concealed. There is a deeper geopolitical dimension here that this channel exists to surface. Putin's grip on power has always rested on a single, unspoken contract with the Russian state apparatus. Deliver strength, deliver results, and retain fear as currency. The moment that contract is perceived to be failing, the moment top generals and intelligence chiefs begin calculating their own futures, is the moment the architecture of Russian authoritarian power becomes structurally unstable. We are not there yet. But the intelligence is telling us the foundations are under strain. Now let us talk about why Putin has reason to be afraid. Because the battlefield numbers, drawn from Western defense institutions, independent verification projects, and Ukrainian intelligence, are extraordinary in their scale. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, one of the most rigorous defense and foreign policy research institutions in the world, Russian forces have suffered nearly 1.2 million battlefield casualties since February 2022. That figure includes killed, wounded, and missing. CSIS made this assessment explicit. No major power has suffered losses of this magnitude in any conflict since World War II. In 2025 alone, Russia sustained roughly 415,000 casualties, an average of 35,000 men every single month. That is not a sustainable rate of attrition for any military force on Earth. Cross-reference that with other credible sources and the picture only deepens. The UK Ministry of Defense placed Russian casualties at over 1.1 million killed and wounded as of October 2025. British intelligence chief Richard Moore estimated approximately 1 million casualties, including 240,000 killed as of September of that year. Most strikingly, in March 2026, President Zelensky, citing Russian government documents obtained by Ukrainian military intelligence, stated that 1,315,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded since the start of the full-scale invasion. He added that even those figures are likely understated. Even the most conservative independent verification supports this scale of disaster. The joint project run by BBC Russian and the independent outlet Media Zona, which counts only deaths they can directly verify through obituaries, court records, and public documents, had confirmed at least 152,000 Russian military deaths by November 2025. They acknowledge that represents only a fraction of the true total, given how aggressively Russia suppresses such information. In terms of equipment, the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency estimated by May 2025 that Russia has lost at least 10,000 ground combat vehicles, including more than 3,000 tanks. Russia has been pulling Soviet-era hardware out of storage depots and military museums simply to keep equipment moving to the front. Now here is the data point that carries the most strategic weight, the one that most clearly defines the direction of this conflict. For 5 consecutive months running into 2026, Ukraine has been inflicting casualties on Russian forces at a faster rate than Russia can recruit and replace them. In March 2026 alone, Ukraine claimed 35,000 Russian casualties in a single month. The Kremlin cannot cycle men through training and field deployment at that pace. And what has Russia gained for all of this? According to Institute for the Study of War data, Russian forces have advanced at an average of just 15 to 70 meters per day during their most prominent offensives. Military historians have noted this is slower than some phases of the Battle of the Somme in World War I, one of the most notoriously brutal and tactically futile campaigns in modern history. Since the start of 2024, Russia has captured less than 1.5% of additional Ukrainian territory. Let that settle. Approximately 1.2 to 1.3 million casualties, 10,000 destroyed vehicles, 4 years of war, and Russia controls less than 1.5% more of Ukraine than it did at the start of last year. This is what strategic failure looks like when you strip away the propaganda. Here at Global Faultlines, one of our core commitments is to track the forces that are reshaping power before they become obvious. And one of the most significant shifts of this entire conflict has received almost no mainstream coverage. Ukraine is no longer the country it was in February 2022. At the start of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine was producing less than 10% of its own weapons and ammunition. It was almost entirely dependent on Western supply chains. That dependency made it strategically vulnerable, subject to the political winds, the delays, the conditions attached to every arms package. That vulnerability is being systematically eliminated. By the end of 2024, Ukraine had grown its domestic arms production to approximately 30 to 40% of total weapons used on the battlefield. Ukraine's Strategic Industries Minister confirmed the country was already producing 50% of its own artillery ammunition by 2024. Prime Minister Shmyhal stated in March 2025 that Ukraine expected to achieve 100% self-sufficiency in artillery through domestic production that year. There are now approximately 800 defense manufacturers operating inside Ukraine, employing nearly 300,000 people. These companies are not simply producing what Ukraine was previously given by Western partners. They are innovating at the frontier of modern warfare. In 2024, drones produced entirely inside Ukraine accounted for 96.2% of all unmanned aerial systems used by Ukrainian defense forces. Ukraine has developed and begun mass production of long-range cruise missiles and is now striking Russian territory at ranges exceeding 2,000 kilometers, reaching deep into Russia's strategic infrastructure. The results are already visible in Russia's war economy. By October 2025, Ukrainian drone strikes had forced nearly 40% of Russia's oil refining capacity offline. Russia's oil and gas sector, the primary engine of its state revenues and its ability to fund the war, is being degraded from the air, systematically, at scale. And the economic data reflects it. According to CSIS analysis, Russia's GDP growth in 2025 slowed to just 0.6%. Manufacturing is contracting. Inflation is persistent. The country faces a severe labor shortage as more and more working-age men are funneled into the war. Russia has 0 companies in the global technology top tier. It is, as CSIS assessed bluntly, declining toward the status of a second or third-rate economic power. This is not a temporary dip. This is structural decay, accelerated by a war that was supposed to last 10 days. Understanding individual battles is one thing. Understanding what this conflict means for the architecture of global power, that is what this channel is built for. Let us zoom out. Viktor Orban, Hungary's prime minister and for years Russia's most reliable ally inside the European Union, has fallen from power. His successor has agreed to unlock a €90 billion loan package for Ukraine and invited EU investigators to examine corruption inside Hungary. That funding sustains Ukraine's war effort well into 2027, independent of what Washington decides. Zelensky has publicly and explicitly broken with the Trump administration's diplomatic framing, stating in clear language that the United States, under its current leadership, is acting in Russia's interests. A year ago, he would not have said that publicly. The fact that he does now reflects a genuine strategic calculation. Ukraine believes it is in a stronger position than it has been since 2022. The Trump peace framework, reportedly drafted in consultations with Russian officials, which would have frozen the front lines and required Ukraine to relinquish significant Donbas territory, is going nowhere. Recent polling shows approximately 60% of the Ukrainian population is opposed to surrendering any land, particularly the territory that forms the strategic corridor toward Kyiv. And geopolitically, something larger is shifting. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney recently stated that the world order is being rebuilt, and that it will be rebuilt out of Europe. It is a statement that would have seemed improbable even 2 years ago, but it reflects a genuine reorientation. Europe is rearming, recoordinating, and reclaiming strategic agency in ways that will shape global power balances for decades. The world that emerges from this conflict will not look like the world that entered it. So let us bring this back to the question we opened with. Is Vladimir Putin winning this war? The intelligence says he is hiding. The battlefield data says his military is being bled at a rate no major power has sustained since World War II. The economics say his war machine is being funded by an oil industry that Ukraine is steadily burning. And the politics say even his closest inner circle may no longer be entirely trusted. Russia is not collapsing today. And we should be precise about that. Geopolitical analysis demands precision over drama. The war continues. The front lines remain contested. Ukraine is hurting too, and the cost to its people has been enormous. But the strategic trajectory, the direction of travel when you assess the data honestly and without the distortion of either Russian propaganda or Western wishful thinking, points in one clear direction. Russia is losing faster than it can hide. And the numbers that Putin does not want you to see are the ones that will determine what the next decade of global power actually looks like. That is what Global Faultlines is here for. To see beyond the headlines, to read the forces others miss, and to give you the analytical framework to anticipate what is coming next. If today's analysis gave you clarity, share it, subscribe, and stay with us, because the fault lines are shifting, and the next fracture is already forming.